The old gym lights buzzed overhead as 15-year-old Jamal Johnson dribbled his worn basketball on the cracked concrete outside Lincoln High School. Every morning before sunrise, he was there practicing his shots while the world still slept. His sneakers squeaked against the pavement as he moved left and right, making shot after shot with perfect form. Jamal had been dreaming of playing for the Lincoln Lions since he was 7 years old. His dad used to tell him that basketball was more than a game, it was a way to show the world what you were made of. Now his dad was gone, and basketball was all Jamal had left to remember him by. When tryout day finally came, Jamal walked into the gym with his heart beating so fast he thought everyone could hear it. The other boys looked at him and whispered things he pretended not to hear. Coach Miller blew his whistle and called all the players to center court. Jamal took a deep breath and told himself this was his moment to shine. The tryouts began with basic drills, and Jamal moved through them like he had been born on a basketball court. His crossover dribble was smooth as silk, and when he shot three-pointers they went in with a perfect swish sound. The other players stopped to watch him play because even they could see he had real talent. But Jamal noticed something else too. Every time he made a great play, Coach Miller would look away or write something on his clipboard without watching. When Jamal scored 15 points in the scrimmage game, Coach Miller was talking to another coach instead of paying attention. After 2 hours of drills and games, Coach Miller finally blew his whistle and told everyone to gather around. He said the team list would be posted on Monday and everyone should go home and wait. Jamal walked to his beat-up bike feeling good about how he played, but something in the coach's eyes made him worry. That weekend felt like the longest 2 days of his life. Monday morning came, and Jamal ran to school earlier than ever before. A crowd of boys stood around the bulletin board outside the gym looking for their names on the team list. Jamal pushed through the crowd and scanned the paper from top to bottom twice. His name was not there. Boys who had missed easy shots and couldn't dribble with their left hand were on the list, but Jamal Johnson was nowhere to be found. His best friend Marcus patted him on the shoulder and said, "Man, this doesn't make any sense. You were the best player out there." Jamal's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back fast because he didn't want anyone to see him cry. He walked to his first class in a daze, wondering what he had done wrong. All day long, kids kept asking him why he wasn't on the team, and each question felt like a knife in his heart. When the school day ended, Jamal didn't go straight home like usual. Instead, he went to find Coach Miller. Jamal found Coach Miller in his office eating a sandwich and looking at game videos on his computer. He knocked on the door, and Coach Miller looked up with an annoyed expression on his face. "What do you want, Johnson?" he asked without inviting Jamal to sit down. Jamal swallowed hard and asked, "Coach Miller, sir, I was wondering why I didn't make the team because I thought I played really well at tryouts." Coach Miller leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "Look, son, the team chemistry is very important, and we already have enough players like you on the squad." Jamal's heart sank because he knew exactly what Coach Miller meant by players like him. "But Coach, I can help the team win games," Jamal said with his voice shaking. Coach Miller stood up and walked to the door. "The decision is final. Johnson, maybe try again next year." Those words hit Jamal like a punch to the stomach, and he walked out of the office feeling smaller than he ever had before. He knew it wasn't about his basketball skills at all. That night, Jamal sat at his kitchen table staring at his homework, but he couldn't focus on anything. His mom, Sarah, came home from her double shift at the hospital and found him looking sad. "What's wrong, baby?" she asked as she sat down next to him. Jamal told her everything that happened and watched as her face got angrier and angrier. "That's not right, Jamal, and you know it," she said while holding his hands. "Your daddy always told you that some people would try to keep you down because of the color of your skin, but that doesn't mean you stop fighting." Sarah stood up and started pacing around the kitchen. "We could call the principal or the school board," she said, but Jamal shook his head. He didn't want to cause trouble or make Coach Miller hate him even more. "Mom, I just want to play basketball," he whispered. Sarah hugged her son tight and said, "Then that's exactly what you're going to do, but you'll have to work twice as hard as everyone else." That night Jamal decided he would keep practicing and be ready if another chance ever came. Every day after school, Jamal went to the outdoor court behind the school and practiced by himself until it got dark. Rain or shine, hot or cold, he was out there shooting baskets and running drills. Sometimes other kids would join him for pickup games, and Jamal would dominate every single one. Word started spreading around school that Jamal Johnson was the best basketball player nobody had heard of. Meanwhile, the Lincoln Lions were struggling through their season. They lost their first 3 games, and Coach Miller was getting pressure from parents and the principal to turn things around. During lunch, Jamal would sit in the cafeteria and listen to kids talk about how bad the team was playing. "They need someone who can actually shoot," one kid said. "Yeah, someone who knows how to play defense," said another. Jamal kept eating his sandwich and said nothing, but inside he knew he could help them win if they would just give him a chance. One cold November afternoon, Jamal was shooting baskets alone when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw Tommy Richardson walking toward him. Tommy was the only black player on the varsity team and one of the few kids who had always been nice to Jamal. "Hey man, I've been watching you play," Tommy said as he grabbed a rebound. "You're really good, why aren't you on the team?" Jamal shrugged and said, "Ask Coach Miller." Tommy nodded like he understood exactly what that meant. They played one-on-one for an hour, and Tommy was amazed at how skilled Jamal was. "Listen," Tommy said as they sat on the bleachers catching their breath. "The team is really struggling, and some of the guys are starting to ask questions about why you're not playing." Jamal looked at him with hope in his eyes. "You think Coach Miller might change his mind?" Jamal asked. Tommy was quiet for a long moment before he spoke. "I think if the right situation comes up, you might get your shot." That situation came sooner than anyone expected. During the game against their biggest rivals, the Jefferson Eagles, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The Lions were down by 20 points at halftime, and their best player Derek Williams had twisted his ankle. Coach Miller was yelling at the team so loud that people in the parking lot could hear him. The second half started, and things got even worse. 2 more players fouled out, and another one got hurt trying to make a steal. With 5 minutes left in the game, the Lions were losing by 30 points and only had 6 healthy players left. Coach Miller looked down his bench and realized he had a serious problem. He needed another player, but the only person left was the team manager. That's when Tommy Richardson walked over to him and said something that would change everything. "Coach, you need to call up Jamal Johnson from the gym class. He's been practicing every day, and he's better than half our starters." Coach Miller's face turned red with anger. "I'm not putting that kid in my game, Richardson," he snapped. But Tommy didn't back down. "Coach, we're getting destroyed out here, and you know Jamal can play." The other players started listening to the conversation and nodding their heads in agreement. Even Derek Williams, who was sitting on the bench with his hurt ankle, spoke up. "Coach, I've seen that kid play during lunch. He's got serious skills." Coach Miller looked around at his team and then up at the scoreboard. The Lions were losing 78-48, and the crowd was starting to leave early. His job was on the line, and he needed anything to change the momentum. Finally, he turned to his assistant coach and said, "Go find Johnson and tell him to suit up." When Jamal got the message, he couldn't believe it was real. He had been in study hall doing homework when Coach Peterson found him and said Coach Miller needed him in the locker room immediately. Jamal ran so fast he almost slipped on the freshly mopped hallway floor. In the locker room, Coach Miller handed Jamal a jersey without looking him in the eyes. "You get 5 minutes, Johnson, don't mess this up," he said in a voice that sounded like he was angry at the world. Jamal put on number 23, and it felt like putting on a superhero costume. His hands were shaking as he laced up his sneakers and tried to calm his racing heart. When he walked out of the tunnel and onto the court, the crowd got quiet because nobody knew who he was. The announcer looked at his roster sheet and said, Now entering the game for Lincoln High School, number 23, Jamal Johnson. Some people in the stands laughed because they thought it was a joke. Others whispered and pointed, wondering who this skinny kid was and why he was coming into such an important game. Jamal tried to block out all the noise and focus on what his dad used to tell him. "When you get your chance, son, you take it and you don't let go." The first time Jamal touched the ball, something magical happened. He dribbled past two defenders like they were standing still and made a layup that got the crowd's attention. The next possession, he stole the ball and made a three-pointer from way outside. Suddenly the gym got a little louder and people started paying attention to number 23, but the Eagles weren't going to make it easy. They started fouling Jamal hard every time he touched the ball, trying to intimidate him. After getting knocked down for the third time, Jamal got up slowly and walked to the free throw line. The crowd was completely silent as he bounced the ball twice and took his shot. Swish, nothing but net. The second free throw was the same perfect swish. Now people were standing up and cheering because they could see something special was happening. With 3 minutes left, the Lions had cut the lead to 15 points and everyone in the gym was on their feet. But then disaster struck again. Tommy Richardson, who had been Jamal's biggest supporter, went down with a knee injury and had to be carried off the court. The team that had been playing with new energy suddenly looked defeated again. Coach Miller called timeout and gathered his players around him. "We gave it a good try, boys, but sometimes that's just how it goes," he said like he was ready to give up. That's when Jamal spoke up for the first time all season. "Coach, we can still win this game, but we have to believe in ourselves." The older players looked at him with surprise because he was just a sophomore talking to seniors. "I've been watching you guys play all season, and I know how good you are," Jamal continued. "We just need to play together and trust each other." Something in his voice made the whole team stand up straighter. Derek Williams hobbled over on his hurt ankle and put his hand in the center of the huddle. "The kid's right, let's finish this thing," he said. All the players put their hands together and shouted "Lions" so loud it shook the whole gym. What happened next was like something out of a movie. Jamal started hitting shots from everywhere on the court. Three-pointers from the corner, fadeaway jumpers, and driving layups that made the crowd gasp with amazement. But he wasn't just scoring, he was getting his teammates involved too. He passed the ball to Derek for an easy basket and found the center under the rim for a slam dunk. The Eagles, who had been cruising to an easy victory, suddenly looked worried. Their coach called timeout after timeout trying to stop the Lincoln comeback, but nothing worked. With 1 minute left, the score was 87-85, and the Lions were only down by 2 points. The gym was so loud that the players couldn't hear the referee's whistle. Everyone was standing and clapping and chanting Jamal's name, even though most of them had never heard of him an hour ago. The kid who couldn't make the team was now the reason they might actually win their biggest game of the year. The final minute felt like it lasted forever. The Eagles scored a basket to go up by 4, but Jamal came right back with a three-pointer to cut it to 1. Then Derek Williams, who was playing on 1, good leg, hit a jumper to put the Lions ahead 92-89. The crowd was going absolutely crazy, and even the parents who had been ready to leave early were now screaming at the top of their lungs. With 30 seconds left, the Eagles had the ball, and everyone knew they were going to try to score. They passed the ball around looking for a good shot, but the Lions' defense was locked in. Finally, with 10 seconds left, they put up a desperation three-pointer that bounced off the rim. Jamal grabbed the rebound and dribbled toward the other end of the court with the Eagles chasing him. The clock was running down 5-4-3-2, and just as it hit 0, Jamal threw the ball high in the air in celebration. The Lincoln Lions had won 90-89 in the most amazing comeback anyone had ever seen. The gym exploded with noise as fans rushed onto the court to celebrate with the team. Jamal was lifted onto the shoulders of his teammates, including some of the same guys who had ignored him in the hallways for months. Coach Miller stood on the sideline watching it all happen with a confused look on his face, like he couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. The local newspaper reporter was frantically taking pictures and scribbling notes because he knew this was going to be front-page news. "Tell me about that incredible comeback," he asked Jamal, as the celebration continued around them. Jamal was breathing hard and sweating, but he had the biggest smile anyone had ever seen. "I just wanted to help my team win," he said simply. "I've been practicing every day waiting for this chance." The reporter asked him how it felt to go from being cut from the team to being the hero of the biggest game of the year. Jamal thought for a moment before answering. "It feels like my dad is watching me from heaven, and he's proud." After the game, word spread quickly through the school and the whole town about what Jamal Johnson had accomplished. By the next morning, his name was trending on social media, and the story of his amazing comeback was being shared by thousands of people. The principal called Jamal into her office and apologized for what had happened during tryouts. "Sometimes adults make mistakes too," she said while shaking his hand. "What matters is that we learn from them and do better." Local news stations wanted to interview Jamal, and college scouts started calling to ask about the mysterious sophomore who had come out of nowhere. But the most important conversation happened that night at home with his mom. Sarah Johnson cried happy tears as she hugged her son and told him how proud she was. "Your daddy always said you had something special inside you," she whispered. He was right. Jamal felt like his heart might burst with happiness because all the lonely hours of practice and all the rejection had finally paid off. The next week at school, everything was different for Jamal. Kids who had never talked to him before were asking for his autograph and wanting to sit with him at lunch. Teachers who barely knew his name were stopping him in the hallway to congratulate him on the game. Even some of the players who had been mean to him during tryouts came up to apologize. But the biggest change was in Coach Miller. He called Jamal into his office and offered him a permanent spot on the varsity team as a starter. "I made a mistake, Johnson," he said while looking down at his desk. "You earned your place on this team, and I should have seen that from the beginning." Jamal accepted the offer, but he also had something important to say. "Coach, I forgive you for what happened, but I want you to promise me something." Coach Miller looked up with surprise. "I want you to promise that you'll give every kid who tries out a fair chance, no matter what they look like or where they come from, Coach." Miller was quiet for a long moment before he nodded his head and shook Jamal's hand. As the season continued, Jamal became the star player everyone had always known he could be. He averaged 25 points per game and led the Lions to the state championship tournament. College recruiters filled the gym every night to watch him play, and scholarship offers started pouring in from all over the country. But Jamal never forgot where he came from or the lessons he learned during those lonely months of practicing by himself. He started a basketball camp for younger kids who felt like they didn't fit in and taught them that talent and hard work could overcome any obstacle. He also became friends with Tommy Richardson, who had recovered from his injury, and was grateful to Jamal for saving his senior season. They would often stay after practice to work on their skills together and talk about their dreams of playing college basketball. The state championship game was held in the biggest arena in the state, with over 15,000 people watching. Jamal's mom sat in the front row wearing a jersey with his number and crying tears of joy every time he touched the ball. The game was close throughout, with both teams trading baskets and neither able to pull away. With 2 minutes left, the Lions were down by 3 points, and it looked like their magical season might come to an end. That's when Jamal took over the game, just like he had done in that first comeback against the Eagles. He hit a three-pointer to tie the game, then stole the ball and scored on a fast break to put the Lions ahead. The crowd was on their feet, screaming as loud as they could, and even the other team's fans had to admire what they were watching. With 30 seconds left and the Lions leading by 1 point, the other team had one last chance to win the championship. They missed their shot, and Jamal grabbed the rebound as the buzzer sounded. The Lincoln Lions were state champions and Jamal Johnson was the most valuable player. During the championship celebration, Jamal was interviewed by reporters from all over the country who wanted to hear his incredible story. He told them about being cut from the team and practicing alone in the dark and never giving up on his dreams. "I want every kid who feels different or left out to know that their time will come," he said into the television cameras. "You just have to keep working and believing in yourself even when nobody else does." The story of Jamal Johnson became an inspiration to young people everywhere who faced discrimination or felt like they didn't belong. Schools across the country invited him to speak at their assemblies, and he always had the same message: your skin color doesn't determine your worth, and your circumstances don't determine your future. He would end every speech by saying, "If a kid from Lincoln High School can go from the bench to the championship, then anything is possible for you." 2 years later, when Jamal was playing professional basketball and had become one of the most famous athletes in the world, he would still think about that night when Coach Miller finally put him in the game. He kept the jersey from that first game in a frame on his bedroom wall, and every morning when he woke up he would look at it and remember how far he had come. He also kept in touch with his old high school and would visit every year to talk to the new students about following their dreams. The outdoor court where he used to practice alone was renamed the Jamal Johnson Court, and kids would come there every day to shoot baskets and imagine they could be just like him. Coach Miller, who had learned his lesson about judging people by their appearance, became one of Jamal's biggest supporters and would often tell people that cutting Jamal from the team was the biggest mistake of his coaching career. "But it was also the most important lesson I ever learned," he would add. "Talent has no color and dreams have no limits." The story of Jamal Johnson proved that one person with enough determination and courage could change not just their own life, but the lives of everyone around them. He showed that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of, but something to be celebrated. Most importantly, he proved that when you get knocked down, the only thing that matters is whether you get back up and keep fighting. His journey from the bench to the championship became a symbol of hope for anyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough or didn't belong. And every time a young person picked up a basketball and started practicing in their backyard or local park, they carried a little bit of Jamal's spirit with them, knowing that if they worked hard enough and believed strongly enough, their dreams could come true too. The boy who was benched because of his skin color had become the man who saved not just a championship but showed the world what was possible when you never give up on yourself. But Jamal's story didn't end with that championship trophy. 3 months after winning the state title, something unexpected happened that would test everything he had learned about forgiveness and second chances. A new family moved to town, and their son Marcus Williams was a basketball player who looked just like Jamal but came from a very different background. Marcus's father was a wealthy businessman who had played college basketball and expected his son to be perfect at everything. When Marcus tried out for the team the next fall, Coach Miller was faced with a difficult decision. He had 2 talented black players now, and some parents were already whispering that the team was becoming too diverse. The pressure from certain community members was building, and Coach Miller found himself in the same situation that had led him to make his terrible mistake with Jamal. During a late-night practice session, Jamal noticed that Marcus was staying after everyone else left, just like he used to do. He walked over and asked if everything was okay, and Marcus broke down crying right there on the gym floor. Through his tears, Marcus told Jamal that his father was furious because Coach Miller had hinted that there might not be room for him on the varsity team. "He said I'm not trying hard enough and that I'm embarrassing our family," Marcus sobbed. Jamal sat down next to him and put his hand on his shoulder. "I know exactly how you feel," he said quietly. "Last year I was in your exact same situation, and I thought my world was over." Marcus looked up with red eyes and asked, "What did you do when everyone gave up on you?" Jamal smiled and said, "I kept practicing every single day until I got my chance, and when that chance came, I was ready. He stood up and grabbed a basketball from the rack. Come on, let's work on your game together, and I'll teach you everything I learned during those lonely months. For the next 2 hours, Jamal coached Marcus on shooting techniques and defensive moves, but more importantly, he taught him about having confidence in himself. The color of our skin makes some people scared, Jamal explained as they practiced free throws. But that fear is their problem, not ours. The next morning, Jamal did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He walked into Coach Miller's office and asked for a private meeting. Coach Miller looked nervous because he knew what this conversation was probably going to be about. Coach, I heard that you might not have room for Marcus Williams on the team, Jamal said in a calm but serious voice. Coach Miller shifted uncomfortably in his chair and said, Well, the situation is complicated, Jamal, and there are a lot of factors to consider. Jamal leaned forward and looked Coach Miller straight in the eyes. Coach, you promised me last year that you would give every kid a fair chance no matter what they looked like. The room got very quiet, and Coach Miller knew he was being called out for breaking his word. Some of the parents are concerned about the team's image, he said weakly. Jamal stood up and walked to the door before turning around one last time. Coach, you have a choice to make, and this time everyone is going to be watching to see what kind of man you really are. That afternoon, during team practice, Jamal called all his teammates together for a meeting without the coaches present. He told them about Marcus and what was happening behind the scenes with some of the parents and community members. This isn't just about basketball anymore, he said to the group of players who had become his brothers over the past year. This is about doing what's right and standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. Derek Williams, who is now the team captain, spoke up first. If Marcus can help us win games, then he should be on the team, period. Tommy Richardson nodded in agreement and said, We all saw what happened when we almost missed out on having Jamal on the team. One by one, every player on the team agreed that Marcus deserved a fair tryout and that they would support him no matter what. The next day, they all walked into Coach Miller's office together and told him that if Marcus wasn't given a real chance, then they would all consider transferring to other schools. The pressure from the team, combined with the media attention that was starting to build around the story, finally forced Coach Miller to make the right decision. He announced that Marcus Williams would be given a full and fair tryout, along with all the other hopeful players. But the story didn't end there, because some parents and community members were still not happy with the direction the team was going. They started showing up to practices and games with signs and making comments that hurt both Jamal and Marcus deeply. During one particularly difficult game against their crosstown rivals, a group of adults in the stands started chanting ugly words every time Jamal or Marcus touched the ball. The whole team was getting distracted and they were losing badly when something incredible happened. Mrs. Sarah Johnson, who had been sitting quietly in her usual spot, stood up and walked down to the court. She grabbed the microphone from the announcer and her voice filled the entire gym. My name is Sarah Johnson and my son Jamal plays for this team, she said as the crowd got completely silent. Last year my boy was told he wasn't good enough to play because of the color of his skin. Her voice started getting stronger and more powerful as she continued. But he never gave up and he practiced every single day until he got his chance to show what he could do. She pointed up at the championship banner hanging from the ceiling. That trophy up there belongs to all of us because this team represents our whole community, not just some of us. The gym was so quiet you could hear a pin drop as she kept talking. If you can't cheer for all our children, then you don't deserve to cheer for any of them. When she finished speaking and handed the microphone back, something amazing happened. People who had been sitting quietly started standing up and clapping. The applause got louder and louder until even some of the people who had been saying mean things joined in because they realized how wrong they had been. That night became a turning point, not just for the basketball team, but for the entire community. Local business leaders and religious leaders started speaking out about the Importance of treating all children fairly regardless of their background. The school board passed a new policy requiring all coaches to attend training about diversity and inclusion. Most importantly, the team came together stronger than ever before, and Marcus Williams earned his spot through his talent and hard work just like Jamal had done. The two boys became best friends and practice partners, pushing each other to get better every day. They would often stay late working on their games and talking about their dreams of playing college basketball together. Marcus learned from Jamal's example that setbacks and disappointments could make you stronger if you didn't let them make you bitter. Jamal learned that being a leader meant standing up for others, even when it was difficult or uncomfortable. The season that followed was even more successful than the championship year had been. With both Jamal and Marcus in the starting lineup, the Lions were nearly unstoppable. They won game after game, often by huge margins, because their teamwork and chemistry were perfect. College scouts came from all over the country to watch them play, and both boys received scholarship offers from the best programs in America. But more importantly, they used their platform to speak to young people about the importance of treating everyone with respect and kindness. They visited elementary schools and youth centers telling their story and encouraging kids to stand up against bullying and discrimination. Their message was always the same no matter where they spoke. We are stronger when we work together, and everyone deserves a chance to show what they can do. During their senior year, something happened that made their story even more powerful and inspiring. A documentary filmmaker heard about Jamal and Marcus and decided to make a movie about their friendship and the lessons their community had learned. The film crew followed them around for months, capturing not just their basketball games, but also their daily lives and the impact they were having on other young people. The documentary, called Second Chances, premiered at film festivals across the country and eventually aired on national television. Millions of people watched the story of how two teenage boys and their community learned that diversity makes everyone stronger. The film won several awards, but more importantly, it inspired other communities to examine their own attitudes about race and fairness. Schools and youth organizations across America started using the documentary as a teaching tool to help kids understand the importance of inclusion and respect. When graduation day finally arrived, Jamal and Marcus had achieved something far more valuable than basketball trophies or scholarship offers. They had helped change the hearts and minds of an entire community and shown that young people could be powerful forces for good in the world. Both boys gave speeches at their graduation ceremony and talked about the lessons they had learned about perseverance, friendship, and forgiveness. Jamal thanked Coach Miller publicly for eventually doing the right thing and giving both him and Marcus fair opportunities. Marcus thanked Jamal for being the big brother he never had and teaching him that setbacks were just setups for comebacks. Their families sat in the audience crying happy tears and feeling proud of the young men their sons had become. The community that had once been divided by prejudice and fear was now united by the shared belief that all children deserved equal chances to succeed. As they prepared to leave for college on full basketball scholarships, Jamal and Marcus made a promise to each other and to their hometown. They would never forget where they came from or the people who helped them along the way. They would use their success to create opportunities for other young people who faced discrimination or felt like they didn't belong. Most importantly, they would always remember that their greatest victory wasn't winning games or championships, but proving that love and understanding could overcome hatred and ignorance. The boy who was benched because of his skin color had become not just a champion, but a leader who helped his community discover that their differences made them stronger. His story became a reminder that sometimes the most important victories happen not on scoreboards, but in human hearts where prejudice is replaced by acceptance and fear is conquered by hope.